Hello there, I'm John Topping. We're starting the Ask Me Anything now at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. A little bit about what's going on here. Like I said, my name's John Topping. I'm an apologist for the Ultimate Questions apologetics team for Power to Change students. And if you're wondering what that word apologetics means, apologetics is just basically giving a rational defense for the Christian faith. So all the different tough questions that come into faith-based sort of discussions, like why does God allow evil? Does science make faith illegitimate? Those sorts of things. Those are all issues in apologetics. And so for Power to Change, I work by speaking at college and university campuses on different difficult topics like that, speaking at conferences, writing, and then also doing videos and things online as well that are related to apologetics. So if you're interested in those sorts of things, you can follow the Ultimate Questions Facebook page and stay up to date with some of the things that we're doing there. And so what we're doing tonight is we're doing an Ask Me Anything, which is basically just you can ask any question relating to things of faith or those sorts of matters. And so tonight, the focus is going to be on why do people think so differently. So basically like worldview issues and how those affect faith-based conversations or just difficult conversations. So if you have questions for that topic or any topic, realistically, any topic that would fit here, please comment below on the video that's going on right now. So you can post a comment down below there. I'll get it. And we can be part of the conversation and hopefully I can get to everyone's questions. And then also, we are going to be doing a conference coming up over New Year's called P2C Plus. It's the Power to Change Conference. And so if you're interested in going to that and checking that out, we're actually going to be doing some apologetics lectures during that time as well. I think there's going to be 6 of them. And so me and the other people on the team are going to be doing some of those talks. So if you find any of this interesting, follow our page, come to the conference, send us a message on Facebook. We'd love to be able to chat with you more about this. So yeah, we're looking forward to that. And so here, let me just check out here on the Facebook to get this, that I can see any of the comments that you're giving. All right, and so one of the questions we had coming in before the video started, just to kind of get things going before people have a chance to comment, one of the videos that we had is, how do I understand someone who thinks completely opposite to me? That's kind of one of the things that made us want to do this talk. And so, first of all, when people are having a conversation and you realize they think completely differently than you, they are not on the same page as you, you're on totally different pages, or even what I talk about it being, you're talking past each other. You're saying something, they're not understanding you, they're talking about something different. So when you realize that's happening, one recommendation I would give is genuinely try to understand the other person. Oftentimes when we get into disagreements with people or we're talking about some sort of heated conversation or something where there can be real disagreement, just human beings in general, we have a tendency to want to just shout our opinion and tell other people why they're wrong and these sorts of things. Or even just like shy away and not really want to be part of the conversation and just kind of let's all just be friends and leave it alone. Those can be the 2 different extremes. I would say the healthy middle ground there is that we can genuinely try to understand each other's perspectives. So if you look on social media, for example, like when I tell people this is the sort of thing that I do, they bring up social media and how you bring up any of these sorts of topics and people are just swearing at each other and insulting each other, where there's an extreme bias and it just gets out of hand really, really fast. And so in those cases, what's happening is there's an extreme bias. There's a couple of fallacious things taking place, like an echo chamber where people are just kind of telling each other what they want to hear and kind of bouncing the same ideas back and forth. And so if you think the same way as me, I'm going to connect with you and you're just going to keep affirming each other. And then also a confirmation bias, only ever being able to listen to something that you already agree with, right? So those things we want to avoid. We want to come into a conversation, realize this person thinks differently than me. They're not going to be affirming all of my opinions. They're going to be saying things that I'm going to disagree with. So rather than just shutting out anything that I disagree with, let's really try to understand what people are saying. And so, like I said, human beings, we just have a natural tendency not to do that. So we have to be genuinely trying to seek out to understand somebody. And so one of the things that I've read about in terms of just human psychology is that our brains are actually wired that when we hear a new idea, we shut it out. We act in hostility against that new idea. We aren't willing to hear that. And so one thing that I do in class, I see some of my students on here already. So one of the things that I make my students do in my class, I teach apologetics and philosophy and ethics at a school in Peterborough. So one of the papers that I make them do, when I make them write these papers, I tell them you have to research people who disagree with you. You can't just write something that is completely confirming your bias, only read people that agree with you, because that's not going to grow you intellectually, and it's not going to create stimulating conversation either. If you're having a conversation with somebody who disagrees with you, wouldn't it be better if you already knew the sorts of thoughts and beliefs they had in place? So I make them go out and research things that they're going to disagree with. And so how do you do this? How do you genuinely seek understanding from somebody who has a different worldview than you? A really easy way. If you've been involved in any sort of apologetics, you'll know there's a very common approach is by a guy named Greg Koukl, and he wrote the book Tactics, one of the books that I recommended through this video. And so a real common approach, a real easy approach in this sort of thing is asking lots of questions. And that might seem overly simplistic, but it really works really, really well. If you find somebody disagrees with you, or you just hear them talking and you think they think completely different than me, ask them questions about their beliefs. Ask them questions about their thoughts, their opinions, why they have those sorts of opinions, these sorts of things. So ask them questions about what they actually believe about a topic, rather than assuming all the things they believe and then trying to shout them down or something. Genuinely try to get where they're coming from. And then in that approach, asking them what they believe, if you do want to apply some gentle critique and you want to be able to give a response, you want to be able to talk about what you believe, you want to be able to critique what they're saying, you can still use questions to do that. By asking questions, you can try to draw out what they believe and critique at the same time. So, for example, if you find out somebody completely disagrees with you, just say it's a Christian and an atheist dialoguing. And the atheist is explaining their beliefs about what they believe about, like there's no spirituality in the universe, there's no God, and they're explaining their beliefs, but they also say that they believe in reincarnation, that they don't believe in spirits like God and angels, but they do believe in something like spirituality, and they believe that we continue, and we go on into another life form when we die. If you wanted to respond in that situation, rather than trying to tell them, oh, here's all the ways that you're wrong or something like that, it's only going to be offensive, only going to make people mad. Asking questions to draw them out even more, to gain more understanding from them while applying a gentle critique. So you could say something like, oh, I've never heard that before. How does your atheism and your belief in reincarnation, how do those work together? Because I've always thought those were opposed. Like, how do you reconcile those things? For you, being not a part of that belief system, you might think, oh, that's stupid, they don't work together, like, let me tell them how they're stupid or something like that, and I'll just try to be nice about it. But really, they might have thought about their worldview a little bit more than you. You might learn a little bit about what they think and believe, and you'll have even more that you can talk to them about. And then also things like, just rather than saying, oh, here's my views, here's why you're wrong, phrasing it in a more constructive way of like, have you ever thought about this view? Have you ever thought about this answer to your question? That sort of thing. So how can you have dialogue with somebody who thinks completely opposite to me? Real easy solution. Ask lots of questions. All right, so another question we had beforehand is an interesting take on this that I hadn't been asked before. Is how do you start a conversation with somebody who has different beliefs and values? So rather than just how do you go about the conversation, how do you start that? If you have a friend, just say a friend you go to school with or something, and you want to talk to them about these things. You're just itching to have a conversation about these things that you have differences of opinion in. And you don't know how to approach it. You don't know how to bring it up without being seen as really rude, right? One thing that I've learned through doing evangelism and doing lots of talks and just through having conversations with people is that people appreciate directness. If you try to bring about a really controversial topic like politics or religion or ethics, if you try to bring that about in a kind of trying to move around the issue without really addressing it, the person is actually going to be more put off by that and kind of put up those barriers that we're all used to when that happens. Oh, you want to talk about that? No, thank you. Right? What I found is if you're really direct in your approach, people actually appreciate that a lot more and are oftentimes more interested. So, for example, for me as a religious person, when I talk to somebody, I've been in situations where I want to have religious dialogue. I care about these people. I want to talk to them about my beliefs and share what I believe with them. And so I've just kind of skirted around the issue and said something like, "Oh yeah, this week at church was really cool. Like we did this and this." And all they hear is, "Oh, religious stuff," and the walls go up, right? Versus other times, I've been talking to somebody, and we're just having a regular conversation, and I just bluntly say, like, "Oh, well, I study philosophy of religion sort of issues. I read a bit about that sort of thing. I like asking other people what they believe. So how about you? What do you believe happens when we die?" And then I wait for an answer. And what do you know? People like talking about themselves. People like talking about their beliefs. Sometimes people are just like, "Oh, it's my own personal opinion." But the vast majority of the time, I think I've only ever had somebody say that like once or twice. Vast majority of the time, you ask somebody about what they believe, they will tell you. If you're genuinely interested and really trying to get a response, really trying to understand them, they can see that. If you're just trying to ask them a question so that you can start giving your beliefs, they'll see that too. So like I said with the first question, genuinely try to understand them, and that will bring out good conversation. So asking them questions about what they believe can be really good. Ask if you want something less direct than that, saying, "I heard something recently about near-death experiences. This really weird lecture I saw on YouTube. What do you think about that? Do you think that sort of thing is possible?" That can lead as a gateway into more interesting, more impactful conversations. And then another trick, you're having a conversation, but another way that I've seen be helpful in these sorts of things is if you have a way to bring up a topic. So, for example, I didn't do this to make conversations happen, but I just realized that it did that. I used to work in a secular environment, so lots of people weren't religious. They didn't have the same beliefs as me. And so I would bring a book to work whenever I'm having a break or anything. I would have a book to read. And I like reading about religious things. And so I would have the Quran with me at work. And my friends come up, "Oh, I thought you were a Christian. Why are you reading the Quran?" "Oh, I just want to know what other people believe." "Oh, that's interesting. So what are you finding in there?" I am now in a religious conversation, having a discussion about a very controversial issue, but we're both very friendly. We both just want to learn from each other and understand each other. And so that has gone really well. I wasn't doing it as a manipulation tactic. It was just, I wanted to have a book to read, and it ended up leading into really good conversations a lot of the time. If you don't have that sort of an in, it can even just be something like bringing up a lecture that you were both a part of lately. If you go to school with somebody and the teacher brought up some sort of controversial issue and they gave their 2 cents, which happens often, just asking a friend of yours, "Hey, so what did you think when the prof said this and this?" And they'll probably tell you what they thought, because people like talking about their thoughts and opinions and beliefs. And then you will probably get a chance to share as well and just be involved in conversation. Bringing up something in the news as well. That can be a really easy way to get into a conversation about a difficult topic in a more conversational and friendly way. All right, so we had a question coming in on the comments. Is it better to ask them questions before you share anything about yourself and your view? I would say probably yes. If you find somebody that's asking you about yourself and your beliefs, then yeah, absolutely answer their questions. But the vast majority of the time that doesn't happen, right? So yeah, if you're just trying to start up a conversation or you're getting into a conversation with somebody, I would say definitely it's better to ask them about themselves. Really, just for human interaction purposes, it's polite. Rather than coming into a conversation with an agenda saying, I have all these things that I want to tell you, it's more polite to be asking somebody about themselves first. So yeah, I would say definitely that can be helpful to be asking them before you start sharing your views. I've even had times where just the whole conversation is me listening to them. That's fine. You've had a good conversation with somebody, they trust you more, you understand them more, and now in future conversations, you can have a chance to bring up what you believe. If you come at the discussion just wanting to shout your own beliefs and values and opinions and those sorts of things, they're going to recognize that and they're not going to want to talk to you. So yeah, absolutely, asking them first is a good practice. So another question that we've had is, why do some people not respect religious claims? So for an example here, you'll oftentimes hear the phrase, well, that's great for you, but it's not something that I necessarily need, right? And other times you'll hear a more extreme view where they'll hear about religious beliefs and values, and they say, those are all just based on myths and fairy tales, right? Where they see it as a different sort of claim than just, say, a scientific claim, right? So when people come into a conversation and you're explaining your beliefs, even if it's not patronizing, even if it's not just looking down on you, if you just recognize, you know what, I think they see religious claims or ethical claims as something different than something like a scientific claim. A good example of this that happened to me recently, I preached a sermon, and afterwards there was a potluck. I always love it when there's food after church. So afterwards there was a potluck, and there was a Hindu at the potluck that hadn't been in the church service, which was great. And so he just happened to sit next to me and found out I was the preacher. And so he was being a good conversationalist and just asking me about myself and asking me about how I got into ministry and about what I believe and these sorts of things. And so we started having a conversation about this. And through our conversation, I quickly realized that he had this view where he didn't necessarily respect religious claims. Not in a rude way. He was very polite, very friendly, really good conversation that we had. But he didn't really see religious claims as something that were to be valued or something that was worthwhile. And so I brought this up, and he said, well, yeah, I think religious claims are a bit different. And so I said, okay, so for example, a scientific claim has a strong answer, has an objective answer. Would you say it's fair in your position that you see religious claims differently than that? And he says, oh yeah, I think they're a very different sort of issue. And so I said, okay, so for example, so me being a Christian, bring it back to that. Let's analyze it under that scope. So did Jesus historically live as a human being? What kind of question is that? Oh, well, that's objective. There's an answer to that. I think he actually did historically live. Okay, did Jesus die by crucifixion? Is that an objective question or a subjective question? And he said, oh, that's objective as well. People are going to die, and it's objectively true that he died that way. And then he brings up the resurrection and the fact that Jesus is God. He said, the idea that Jesus is God is not an objective claim. It's a subjective claim. It's meaningful to you as a religious person. And I said, well, that's like, I kind of figured that that's where he was going. And so I said, that's interesting. Is Jesus God? I would say that's actually an objective claim. And if it's objectively false that Jesus was God, then I'm a complete idiot for believing in him. That he is God. That's a stupid thing to believe if it's false. It doesn't matter if it's valuable to me or not. If it's objectively false that he's God, then I'm wrong in believing that, and I should want to know that. And he was kind of like, oh, I've never really thought about it that way. Right? So I think sometimes when people are having this sort of disrespect towards religious claims, I think it happens with ethics and with politics as well, is they see it as more of a personal opinion, a personal value that you might have, rather than something that could be objective. And so just, first of all, just recognizing that and having that come about in the conversation can be very helpful, can lead to really good conversation and really good further dialogue on that issue. And so I think that also comes back to a difference in worldview when we see the Eastern mindset and the Western mindset. So a Western mindset tends to be very objective, tends to be very fact-based, also including religious matters. And so you look at the more Western religions, the more Abrahamic faiths. Those ones are more based on fact, where this is the way it is, and then trying to show that that's true or something like that. Where a more Eastern mindset in religious values, it's welcoming to all thoughts and opinions. You can meet somebody, like I've talked to different missionaries that have gone to other countries where there's other sorts of religious and social values, and they will say, like, oh, hey, here's this guy Jesus, you should know about him and follow him. And the people will say, oh, great, yeah, I will. And they go, oh, cool, I just got a convert. When really what they're believing is that you can believe tons of different things all at the same time, and it doesn't matter. Because they're not seeing it in an objective light, they're seeing it in a subjective light. And so missionaries, realistically, they should do a good job before they go and understand the cultural mindset. But a lot of missionaries that first went over into a more Eastern-minded cultural setting were thinking they were doing really good work when really they hadn't even gotten past the front door. And so they started realizing those cultural mindsets and thought, oh, I have to figure out how to navigate this cultural difference before I can really make any sort of difference in these people's lives. And so just recognizing that can be really helpful for your future conversations. Okay, so another question that I've had in religious circles. So this has come from Christians wondering about how their views differ from other people. There's a really weird question, and I can see where people go with this, why they ask this question. In terms of differences of opinion, is it ever appropriate to discriminate? And it's not like people are saying, oh, I really want to look down on people, I really want to hate people and judge them. Is it ever okay for me to do that? That's not the heart behind it. It's more just wondering, is it ever appropriate for me to really stand for what I believe in a way that will actually be maybe detrimental to somebody else, right? So that question comes up a fair bit. And that an equal sort of question is, are Christians necessarily bigoted? Are we necessarily bigots because of what we believe? And so I find that to be a really interesting discussion, because you get totally different worldviews clashing when you get that sort of a question. And rather than responding emotively and just jumping in and wanting to shout out your opinion, really try to understand both sides. All right? So first of all, for this question, I think it's important to look at the definitions of words like bigoted and intolerance and prejudice and these sorts of things to see, is that what people are doing? Right? So for example, if you just do a quick Google search on the word bigoted, it's having or revealing an obstinate belief in the superiority of one's own opinions and a prejudiced intolerance of the opinions of others. Now, quickly people would jump on that and say, absolutely, that's Christianity. You believe you're right and everybody else is wrong. You believe in the superiority of your own view. And I would say, I do believe in the superiority of my own view. If I didn't, I wouldn't believe it. And I would argue, everybody believes in the superiority of their own views. Everybody believes that their beliefs are right, or else they wouldn't believe them. Right? That's just logically how it works. Is it an obstinate belief? Is it a belief in the superiority of your own views that gives a prejudiced intolerance of other people's opinions or values or beliefs? And that's where we get into more of discussion on that. So that involves further words that need to be defined. So, for example, a prejudiced intolerance towards other people's beliefs. A prejudice is a preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. Now, have we ever met religious people that are prejudiced, that have a preconceived opinion, their Christianity, they believe their Christianity, and it's not based on actual reason? Absolutely, we know people like that, right? Absolutely, there are religious people that believe what they believe, or even non-religious people, non-Christians, just people that are spiritual, people that are atheistic, anybody. We've met people that have beliefs in those matters that aren't well-reasoned in that don't know why they believe what they do. You ask two questions and they start stumbling because they've never thought that far into it. Absolutely, we know people like that, and absolutely Christians fall into that category at times. Nobody should fall into that category, though. everybody should be well-reasoned and informed about their own beliefs. Not even other people. Let's do that too. Not even other people yet, though. We should all be well-reasoned in our own beliefs, know what we believe and why, and be able to reason through that and have a reason for why we think our opinion is correct. That just makes sense. And so a prejudiced bias against somebody or a prejudiced intolerance would always be bad. We should always have reasons for what we believe. So already the word bigot doesn't apply to somebody who would be a good Christian or a good religious person because they should have reasons for what they believe. Now, are they intolerant? Can you be reasoned and yet intolerant? What does tolerance actually mean? What does the word tolerance actually imply? And should Christians be tolerant is a really interesting question. The Christian view of tolerance would be something like this. I think there's a difference between internal tolerance and external tolerance. Internal tolerance is when we're discussing matters within Christianity. And so, for example, a question like this. Should a church hire a pastor that isn't a Christian? Seems like the answer would be no. That's happened before, where pastors have been in churches where they didn't believe there even was a God. But should a religious institution, the job of which is to preach Christianity, just say, should they have a pastor, or should they be forced to hire somebody that doesn't even believe in those things? Seems strange to even have to ask that. If you're wanting a job in a religious institution, it would seem like you should have those beliefs and values. It'd be like somebody wanting to work for PETA, who is very much in favor of animal rights. Somebody goes into PETA and wants a job, and they find out that the person is a hunter. Guess what? They're not going to get the job, right? If somebody comes to my church and wants a job, now I'm not in the hiring position, but if somebody were to come to my job and I was the one in the hiring position, and I find out that they don't believe in the death and resurrection of Jesus, I'm not going to hire them. Right? So in that case, tolerance isn't really welcome in an internal sense, because you don't tolerate things that would be detrimental to your congregation. On the other hand, tolerance outside is a totally different matter. So just say tolerating other people's beliefs, being kind to them, that sort of thing. Absolutely, we should tolerate other people's beliefs. We don't go around shouting people's opinions down. And I think this comes into what tolerance actually means. We throw that word around in our society so much, but tolerance is not actually, it's a good thing that we should be doing, but it's a strange thing because it's not actually a very nice thing. Tolerating somebody isn't actually a very nice thing. For example, I'm married. Suppose my wife cooked dinner for me, and I come home and I go to have some dinner and she puts it before me and I taste it and she goes, "What do you think, honey?" I say, "It's tolerable." She's probably going to be very insulted, probably not going to be very nice to me the rest of the night, right? Reasonably so. The idea of tolerating somebody or something implies disagreement. It implies you don't value what they value or you don't believe what they believe. And so tolerating what they believe implies not believing. And so should Christians be tolerant? Absolutely, we should be tolerant. We should be kind to people who believe differently than we do. We should want to have civil discussions, not shouting them down. Like you look at the people that hold up signs that tell everybody how much God hates them. That's not a Christian attitude to have. So absolutely Christians should be tolerant, but tolerance doesn't then imply that we should believe what everybody believes or that we should agree with everybody. For example, people that accuse Christians of being intolerant. That is intolerance. That is bigoted. If you're looking at somebody saying, "Oh, you have beliefs that are different than me. Oh, you're terrible for having beliefs that are different than me." Like, you shouldn't be allowed to have a say in this matter. You shouldn't be allowed to be part of the discussion because your beliefs are different. That is bigoted, right? So having a proper understanding of what tolerance is very helpful in that discussion, that we should be tolerant, but that doesn't imply we have to all agree all the time. We should all be tolerant of different people's opinions and values. So we're just wrapping up now. I'm looking at the time. Oh wait, we have one more question coming in. What makes your opinions correct and other people's opinions wrong if they are just as certain that their opinions are the right way to go? Again, having reasons for what you believe. Being prejudiced is, being unreasonably biased towards your own opinion. So you have your own opinion, you have your own beliefs. That's great. Being prejudiced is when you have your own beliefs and opinions that aren't based on reason or actual evidence. And so what everybody should do, not just Christians, not just religious people, everybody's beliefs and thoughts and opinions should be based on reason and argumentation. If somebody wants to challenge you in your beliefs, just say, for the sake of argument, if somebody wants to challenge you in your beliefs and you don't have an answer, it's probably good to look into that, right? If somebody can challenge you and show you that your beliefs may be mistaken, maybe you are mistaken. Maybe it deserves to be looked into a little bit more. That's a healthy thing. That's a good thing. That happened to me when I was in college. I had my faith challenged. I had to look into it. I found that it really stood up to reason and rationality, and the evidence stood up for my Christian faith. So I think that's very important. What makes my opinions correct? So as a Christian apologist, my job is literally like arguing about, in a polite sense, arguing about religious matters and seeing where the evidence lies. Does the evidence lie in favor of Christianity or against it? I mean, I think after doing research into the topic for over a decade now, I really find that the evidence falls in favor of Christianity. I don't believe it with a blind, irrational faith. I believe it with a reasoned faith. And so we're wrapping up our time now. It's 9:30. And so just to conclude, again, we would love for you to come out to the Power to Change conference, P2C+. We're going to have apologetics workshops there. I'll be speaking there as well. And if you want to keep up to date with events like this, we're going to be doing this Ask Me Anything every week at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesdays. So come tune in again. If you want to stay up to date, you can like and follow this page. You can also like and follow our Ultimate Questions page. That way you can see, keep up with what we're doing and the sorts of things going on. And also, if you want to shoot us a message, someone on our team can be in dialogue with you to further the conversation. We'd love to do that. And so next week, we're going to be talking about Christianity and other religions or other gods. And do all religions say the same thing? Or do any faith lead to God? And how do we handle the idea of religious diversity, that people have different opinions and beliefs on these matters? So we're going to be looking at Christianity with other religions. So please do tune in next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And if anybody heard this and you thought the concept of apologetics is really interesting, you'd be interested in having that on your college campus or your university campus or your church, just contact myself or one of us on the Ultimate Questions team, and we'd love to be in dialogue with you about coming out to your group. So hopefully I'll see you all next week for the next Ask Me Anything. Bye.